I will disagree with you because I
That's what
think
you typically do. Is there such a thing as a law of faith? Is faith a law?
well I think it is.
I like what you say, but there's some problems with it.
Oh yeah, hit me with the problems. Let's go. So again, I think it is a law. It's out
I'm trying to help you out here.
Greg.
Tom.
Here we are again
Yep.
to talk about religious meta narratives, the big stories in religion, and to try and bring the context, the nuance, to talk about these things in depth.
Yes.
We keep saying this is a celebration of context and nuance and conversation. So here's a conversation for us to have, because there's a huge religious meta narrative, and it is that of faith.
Yes.
And pretty recently, the likes of Dr. Tara, I think, Mr. Director, you could put that on the screen. She's a famous neuroscientist, and she's been one of the leading thinkers in bringing to our consciousness the law of attraction. And the good people on the side of faith are saying, wait a second. I mean, we've been doing this for a long time. In fact, we have the system on how it's done and how it works. And I guess the conversation for us, maybe Greg should begin in the definition of terms. What is faith, and what is the law of attraction? And then let's bring the context and the nuance, and let's have a conversation about this. Now, let's start at the best place to start, the beginning. What's your understanding of the law of attraction? What is...
Yeah. So as we were chatting just a moment ago, I am struggling with this concept that it is a law, as in the law of gravity, the law of aerodynamics. The law of attraction seems to me a bit of a stretch. And I'm not saying that it doesn't exist, but to call it a law as a physical law, I'm reluctant to go that far in my thinking. I think it's a wonderful technique. I think there's some real value in it. But to say it's a law, I'm not so sure about that.
Yeah, I guess there's a conversation to be had there. I will disagree with you because I
That's
think
what you typically do.
I think it's a law. I mean, maybe let's define terms. Here is a kind of like a standard definition of what we're talking about here on top of the law of attraction. The law of attraction is a philosophy suggesting that positive thoughts bring positive results into a person's life, while negative thoughts bring negative outcomes. So you think positively, positive things will come to your life. You think negatively, negative things will come to your life. Sports scientists and psychologists tell us, I love sports. I mean, I'm into sports. You go into a game telling yourself you're going to lose. Guess what?
You lose.
You're going to lose. Okay. You start a marathon telling yourself that, I don't think I'll finish this. I'm just going to go as much as I can, then I'll quit. Chances are you are not going to finish this. You can argue against that, Greg. I mean, that's actually true. positive thoughts bring positive results. So maybe it actually is a law.
Well, I would love to have it as a law. Don't get me wrong. I think it's a
Yeah.
wonderful idea to have a law. On a personal level, I have had many happy thoughts about revenues for my business. And I have closed my eyes, imagined what the number should be, the sales, etc. on it. That hasn't worked out very well for me. So all my positive thinking, my positive thoughts, hasn't manifested itself in my bank account. Now, saying that, I love the idea. Even though it doesn't seem to be working for me the way I think it should, I'm not saying that there isn't some value to it. As a young person, I remember reading a number of books. One by Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. Quite a famous book, and millions of copies have been sold worldwide. And again, it's this idea about thinking and holding this concepts and numbers and accomplishments, and it'll happen. Think and Grow Rich. It's a brilliant title. And then later on, I remember sitting in church and hearing somebody get up there and says, "You know what, folks, there's this thing called the ABCs of prayer." And I said, "Oh, that sounds interesting."
Okay, yeah.
And A is to ask, and B is to believe, and C is to claim. And I thought, that's really close to what I had just read in this Napoleon Hill book, Think and Grow Rich. Well, it was different terminology, the same concept. I said, well, this is a biblical thing.
Is it?
Yeah, and again, that's
Yeah.
that's
I think that's the question that religious people are saying. Well, is this really faith? Is this how faith works? Ask, believe, and claim. Is this how faith really works? Because it sounds like when it comes to the law of attraction, a similar approach is at play.
Well, if you listen to some of the mega churches programs on Sunday morning, there's usually one or more component that they throw in. Send your money to them. And then for sure it'll work. So I'm not convinced that asking, believing, and claiming and sending money to XYZ church is a religious event.
Let's dial it back.
Okay.
This is an interesting conversation. Let's dial it back. Okay. According to Dr. Tara and a lot of other people out there, you can look them up online. You'll find this huge conversation happening online. The argument, Greg, is that the problem that humans have is in our minds, the brain. Let me use that word, the brain. Okay, and let me approach this from a biblical, Christian perspective. I think the Bible will argue that as a human being thinketh, so is he or she. So we're all agreeing that there is a movement that happens from our thoughts to our actions. And the law of attraction is saying that you have to pay attention to what occupies your mind. Because if the biblical narrative is true, that there is this transition that happens from thought to action, then it is true also of the law of attraction that something that moves from thought to action is also important. So negativity in your mind, negativity in your actions. You want positivity in your actions, put positivity in your mind. You're looking at me like this is getting pretty mysterious here.
So at one level, I think you're onto something. And I think this is interesting. You refer to the creation narrative. And again, I'm going to put God in a bit of a box here. And I'm going to say, when God thought about creating this earth, that was the first action in creating.
Okay.
So we, being a child of the Creator, our first action to accomplishing something is to envision it, and then ultimately we bring it into reality. And I understand that, because the businesses that I have been involved with, I first had to envision it, and I have a pretty clear ability to do that. I walked up and down that building numerous times in my mind and saw where the equipment was going to be, et cetera, on it. And then we went out and got builders to build the thing, et cetera. And it's remarkably close to what my original picture was to what we have today.
Yeah.
So in that end of it, I get that.
Did you attract it, Greg?
I'm attracted. But what I am not convinced of is that by me laying in my hammock thinking happy thoughts, things are going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be smart, but that I've tried that, and you know what? The only thing that happened is my dog came by.
Yeah.
FedEx never came by with a box of
goodies.
Goods. No, it never happened.
No, but I guess to be fair to the argument here, the law of attraction also dictates that there are some action steps that accompany that. So it is positivity in your mind, and then positivity playing out in action steps that you are taking. And I think sometimes the law of attraction gets a bad rap in that it is spoken of in the context of the mysterious. No, it's actually maybe there is an element of the mysterious in there, meaning that mysterious being stuff that is not easy to explain as human beings, but there are action steps.
And that part I really like. This is where this Dr. Tara that you were referring to earlier has defined something that I think is really useful. And then she talks about a board. And many times you hear these gurus saying, well, you need to have a board up there, your picture board, and put all the stuff that you want, your goals, your aspirations, and whatever. And that's a interesting concept. With her, she actually breaks it down and says, you know what, you need an action board. So the action board is similar, but saying, okay, here are things that I have to take action on. So if I want to have a new car, a better hairdo in my case, whatever it is, then this is my action board. And that actually changes a lot. Now, what I'm intrigued by is that when you have an action board, it then allows the human brain to start breaking it down as, okay, there's certain elements that we need to accomplish to get that. That I am intrigued by, and I see much value in it. And going back to your envisioning, etc. on it, one of the things about an action board, it implies that there's probably going to be some work involved.
Yeah.
And maybe hard work and long hours and all the stuff that goes with it to accomplishing some of these goals.
Yeah.
When you talk about a sports event where you're saying, hey, I'm going to go for a run, and if I don't think I'm going to make it, there's a pretty good chance I'm not going to make it because you've already decided you're not going to make it.
Yeah.
But in the same breath, if you say, look, I am going to compete at this track and field, I know that the competitors are going to be really good. And the nice thing about a sports event is that everybody knows the rules of the game. Everybody understands what it is to win and lose. And all the players involved have a clear understanding of what is needed to happen. So in this case, and in your case, you have done track and field. So as you say, okay, I'm going to run 10 laps or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You know, on lap 8 and 9, your lungs are going to be burning, your feet are going to be hurting, you're going to be pushing every ounce of energy out of your body that you can.
Yeah.
And one of the things that you can do mentally is to say, okay, this is going to happen. How am I going to overcome that? How am I going to run through my pain, run through my stress, and still accomplish my goal? So in that respect, I am quite convinced that the law, if you want to use this word, of attraction is very powerful and useful, because you have said, I am going to deal with some challenges, and here's what I'm going to do to get through it.
Yeah. So the law of attraction, I guess we're agreeing, the law of attraction is not a get out of jail card, you can't avoid the work. The work will be done.
Yes, but you brought up something precisely, but you brought something up really interesting. As a Christian, we talk about faith and praying. Now, I've just outlined what an action board is.
Yeah.
And we've talked about mentalizing the fact that you're going to have some stress, et cetera, on it, but you're going to accomplish your goal. As a Christian, I'm often invited to, and it's a privilege to say, okay, my neighbor is dealing with health issues, marital issues, all the issues of life. Have faith and pray for him. Now I find myself back in my hammock saying, hey, God, help the guy, amen. Whatever, and I'm compressing my prayer.
Yeah.
But my point is that as a person in a faith community, I find myself not doing an action board when I pray.
That is interesting. There's a story that has been shared in my childhood. Also, like many stories, I don't know what the origins of the story are, and but anyway, here we go. Yeah. Like two farmers pray to God, and they say, God, please send rain. Okay. One farmer prays and then goes on his hammock and takes a nap, waits for the rain. The other farmer says, God, please send rain. And then he goes out and he starts working the land, preparing the land for the rain. And I think what you are saying is that in the faith approach of this, there also has to be action. So you can't just say something or pray about something and not take action.
Yeah, I have a little bit of problem with that.
Okay,
Because there is many cases where that does work. Somebody prays and events and circumstances change, and there is the desired goal is accomplished, and the person either regains their health or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So there's lots of examples where we see that, where we can't do anything. But I think there is a profound difference between saying, here is a life goal that I have, and here is a problem that I can't solve. And by saying this is a life goal, then I can create an action plan possibly that is very efficient to get to that life goal. A problem that I can't solve, and particularly, this is where I think it becomes the dividing point, line in the sand is on the life goal. this is something I can do personally to accomplish that.
Yeah.
When my neighbor has health issues, it's not in my power, unless I'm a physician, to go and do much other than stop in and give him some water and biscuits. So what I'm coming to is that some things are not, we are not able to have an
Influence?
action board on.
Wow. So you're saying that, see if I'm understanding you correctly, that be it faith or the law of attraction, they both have limitations. There are some things that just don't even bother having an action board on because they are out of your control. Is that what you're saying?
You get almost right. What I'm saying is that on a personal level,
Yeah.
I believe an action board is productive. When it comes to helping a friend that has I'm going to use a health issue, then my action board gets pretty small. All I can start recommending is, hey, if you check this or that other thing. Now my faith has to be strong.
Greg, what is faith? What is faith? Because I think we're working with these terms and we're, like, what is faith? What's the biblical definition of faith? What is it? Is it Hebrews 11, the chapter of faith, say? Let's put it on the screen, Mr. Director. Could you put Hebrews 11 on the screen? Because I think that is in the Christian meta narrative. That is where we have set our foundations as far as defining faith. Okay, so here we go. Hebrews chapter 11, and it is the first verse. It says, 11 verse 1, now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. So, your neighbor is sick, and if you have confidence in that hope that they are going to get well, therefore you now have assurance of something you don't see. That sounds like the law of attraction to me. Is it not?
Let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
Is there such a thing as a law of faith? Is faith a law?
Well, I think it is. I think it is an interesting play on words, but I think faith is a law, even though it has not been presented as a law. I'll give you an example from the same book, Hebrews chapter 11. Further down, I think that is verse 6. It says, and without faith, it is impossible to please God. Because, now catch the key word here, anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. So if I'm to go on that text, it says anyone who comes and believes, that's it, it's done.
So you have to believe in God.
Yeah, so it's a law.
So there's a...
Or maybe, Greg, before you go there, okay, why I say it's a law, the law of gravity says, okay, if you jump out of an airplane, you're not going to go up. You're going to come down and pretty fast. That's the law of gravity. Whether I like it or I don't, if I jump out of an airplane, I'm going down. The law of faith then says, hey, whether I like it or I don't, anyone who comes to God believing, God honors that. Therefore, maybe faith then becomes a law. And if we define faith with what we have in Hebrews 11, then sure, it's a law. And it sounds pretty similar to the law of attraction, because with the law of attraction, mostly, and I have to admit, I don't know everyone who is, top thinkers in this field. Most people who put value on the law of attraction, or some people who put value on the law of attraction, some is a better word, some people who put value on the law of attraction are not all people of the Christian faith. And yet, it still works for them. So maybe the meta-narrative that we've worked around in the Christian community that makes faith exclusive to us only, maybe we need a conversation around that. Because anyone who comes to God, God honors. And there are examples of that in the Holy Scriptures, the biblical text.
I like what you say, but there's some problems with it.
Oh yeah, hit me with the problems. Let's go. Conversation. Yeah, let's go.
You use an example of jumping out of an airplane.
Yeah.
Every time anybody jumps out of an airplane, as long as they don't get extremely high, but they're going down. Absolutely. Every time, consistently.
Yeah.
The law of thermodynamics works really well. All these laws work consistently.
Mm-hmm.
If we were up in a group, an airplane, and I jumped out, instead of going down, I pop up, and the scientists were with me, and they would say, "Wow, that should not happen."
Yeah, yeah.
And we lost that boy in space. Now we have an issue here.
I can't help but think about it. You're jumping out and up you go, and we lose you in space. That is, we should try that.
No, we should.
Yeah.
So the next time I go up, I go down, back and forth. Every once in a while, they lose me in space.
Yeah.
Then we would question if it's a law. I say, you know what? This law we don't quite understand it fully, because sometimes it works as we expect it, and other times it doesn't. So what I'm coming to is that in the Christian community, we pray for healing for a lot of people.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I hear where you're going now.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we bury a lot of people.
We do. Yeah.
So my point is that if this was a consistent law, there'd be less. Well,
yeah, Craig, that's a. I hate to admit it. That's a big problem. Yeah, that is a problem, because if it's a law, then you would expect the law to hold consistent in each and every situation where the law is applied. The argument I could bring up in line with that maybe could be that the law of gravity, back to our airplane where I'm imagining you going up, it's super Greg. No. No. In the airplane, the context we are using for that is that things are supposed to go down. In the law of attraction,
it should be predictable.
It should be predictable. Okay. According to this law, if I drop you out of an airplane, you are going down. And that's the context in which the law exists. Okay. the law of gravity allows us to have these microphones
Yes.
down and not floating up there, us trying to catch the mic. And, the context of the law of attraction is your very being, your mind. Maybe in that context, the law holds true, and therefore faith holds true. That what is in your mind, the positivity you take in affects how you think and see the world around you, and ultimately how you interact with the world. Maybe we're stretching the law of attraction to places where it's limited. And we spoke about the limitations at some point, in the same way like gravity, it's about things going down. I don't know, Greg, that's a difficult question.
So I've run into another theory, and again, this is a theory, not even a theory. It's just an interesting idea.
Yeah.
Is that you probably done this? You go into a sports event, there's thousands of people there, and you see somebody way down in the bleachers there, and you start looking at the back of that guy's head.
Mm-hmm.
What oftentimes happens?
That's a difficult one. What happens?
What happens? 9 times out of 10, after a while, that person will turn around and look at you. And what?
That's yeah.
And they'll look at you. What is it that by my looking at somebody caused them enough uncomfort that they turned around and looked directly back at me? They knew exactly where to look. The other interesting thing is that I've never gone down this training, but I'm told when the detectives are trained to follow a person, be it in a car or in a crowd, don't look at the back of their head and only look at them for a second. Keep them in your sight, but don't focus on the person. They will sense it.
Huh.
So now what I'm coming to is that perhaps we are more amazing than we think we are. Yeah. And my point and this is the thinking and the theory is that by me praying or putting a blessing on somebody, and again I'm using the word blessing in a loose term, I am transferring something of my resident thought pattern to that person that I am praying for and hoping for health or happiness or whatever the thing is.
So we can share the positivity?
That's an interesting idea, and I think there's some truth to that. And again, I have very little to support that, except that this is one of the ideas that I have run into, and I thought that's actually quite an intriguing idea, that I could actually transfer a prayer onto you, much like the guy in the sports event where I am looking at him, or we're following him through the crowd. There is something that scientists do not know, but instinctively people do know.
Huh. I guess at the end of the day, it's also, like you said, it's the concept you've come across, theory you've come across. It just also affirms in a certain way that there is something mysterious about how what's in our minds and what we're acting on affects the world around us.
Yes.
It's there. It's something that exists. Here's another one. This is the author of the bestseller, I think, When the Body Says No, Mr. Director. Could you put that on the screen? The book When the Body Says No. I think it is written by Gabo. I think that's how he pronounces his name, Gabo Mate. Fascinating book. I read through the book. Fascinating book. His argument, his basic argument in that book is that the negativity that we hold inside is one of the leading causes to illness. Okay. So he is making the argument, and he has, tons of research he shares in that book. He says our bodies hold this negativity for so long, and as a way of dealing with the traumatic events and the negativity we're holding, it plays out as sickness. So according to him, what's coming into our being is important, because ultimately it alters the world we live in. It alters who we are. And he is not calling this, I've listened to some of his interviews where he comes close to saying, it's the law of attraction. But the science, the neuroscience that he's coming with, and that Dr. Tara is coming with, they're saying this stuff really affects us either negatively or positively. And hence why I am just digging my feet in and saying, I think it is a law. I think it is a law. And if we maybe move away from thinking of, if I drive down the road here and I do 300 Ks an hour in a 60 K zone, and the police officer will stop me right there and reward me for my actions in breaking the law. Okay. Yeah. The other laws that we break, like when we go against the law of attraction, maybe we get the ticket 15, 20 years down the line. That doesn't negate it from being a law. It's still a law. And maybe faith and the law of attraction are two concepts that are trying to grapple with this law and try and understand it. But I'm like I said, I'm digging my feet in on this one, and I'm willing to be dug out. I think it's a law.
Well, just to help you out on your side of the argument, as a Christian community, we have read in the scriptures about an interesting story about a miracle. And again, this is following your same thinking. As the centurion comes to Christ and says, "My servant is ill, very ill. Please come and heal him." And he doesn't even say that. Please heal him.
Yeah.
So Christ, okay, let's go. And he said, "Oh, no. Don't bother coming. You just say the word, and it'll happen." And he jumps on his horse and heads to town and gets some pizza or whatever's happening.
Yeah.
Christ goes back and says, "I haven't seen this much faith in all of Israel."
Whoa. That's a beautiful story. So the centurion is not a Jew.
He's not a Jew.
Yeah. So anyone.
Could be anyone. We don't have any background on his belief system.
Yeah. Yeah, but he believes that...
He believes.
That this fellow can actually pull this off.
Yep.
I have someone who's sick, and this guy can pull it off. He can heal, and he doesn't need to come to my house to do it. He can just say it, and it happens. And there is a person who is seen at that time as outside of the people of faith, people who have the right of use of this, and he uses it, and it works, and he gets the admiration of Jesus the Messiah. And he says, "Wow, I haven't seen it this good." So, again, I think it is a law. It's out
I'm trying
there.
to help you out here.
It's somewhere. We're all grasping at it as frantically as we can. The people of the Christian faith are grasping at it, giving this thing, these names, we call it faith. We, many other, and other people on this other side of our being are also grasping at it, and they're calling it the law of attraction.
So I love this. Okay, I want to sign up for what you're describing.
Yeah. $25.
What do we do with the people that have their child that is ill and in the hospital, and there's pipes and tubes, and they're praying for it, and people in their faith community and praying for it? Do we go and tell them, oh, by the way, you're not saying the right words? Which I've heard people say that.
Yeah.
Or you're not doing this correctly. You don't have the right thinking on. And there's all sorts of things that I have heard people say that are deeply in stress, and say, oh yeah, just have faith, and they have faith, and the person gets sicker and sicker, and this child dies prematurely. So do we go back and say, the law of attraction, the law of the faith is a real law, and you know what? If you'd only done it differently, your child would be alive today. That's a pretty big pill to swallow.
It is. I agree with you on that one. The question of human suffering, I've seen some people out there who actually do believe that you can think your way out of a difficult situation. I guess I've seen some people who say the law of attraction or faith insulates you from difficult situations because you're always thinking positively. And therefore, what you attract is only that which is positive. And yeah, I think that's the pendulum maybe swinging towards the other extreme. I don't think I'm diluting my conviction about these two by saying that the definition of the human experience is not complete without suffering.
Well, wait a minute. What did you say? Are you saying that for me to have a human experience, I have to have pain? Is it kind of like this theory, we don't appreciate good until we know bad?
Maybe if I can reword that theory, we appreciate good because we have seen bad. Sounds pretty much similar, but in my mind, it's us saying, because there is bad, therefore there is good. We see the good because we also see the bad. For life to exist, there has to be death, maybe?
Oh.
How can we say this is life when we don't know what death is? Is it possible? Can you say this is a sunrise when you haven't seen a sunset? Can you?
Sure. Let me tell you this.
Okay.
I assure you, I don't need to eat hot peppers to know that ice cream is good. Using that, yeah. So if we back that thinking up, if we say, look, the only way we as humans can experience joy and happiness is if we have seen pain and agony and death, then that makes a very strong case for our great-great-great-grandparents to have said, you know what? For my children to know what joy and happiness is, they first of all have to have some pain and agony.
Yeah, I mean, I see the weakness in how I presented this, and I think you've done one of those things that you do best, Greg. You've just, in conversation, you've just ripped my argument apart and shown the worst case scenario of it. But I think what I'm saying here, I'm lightly digging my feet in here, just slightly. What I'm saying here is that there is no definition of life that does not include death. Like, to be human is to be in conversation with life and death. The very seasons we go through are seasons of life and death. It is a part of the definition of what it means to be here. At least I think so. We cannot have a full picture without bringing these two ideas into conversation with each other, saying it is either life or it is either death. It is making things too black or white. Yeah. But bringing them in conversation with each other.
So what you're saying is that there is, and I'm going to use this, strong laws and weak laws.
Oh boy.
And are we saying that the strong law of death supersedes the weaker law of faith and attraction?
No. I think what I am saying here is that the law of attraction exists in conversation with the tragedies, and ultimately death being one of those tragedies, that we have to be in conversation with in our lives. I mean, at this very moment, somewhere in this world, in fact, even to people who are watching this conversation, someone just celebrated the birth of a child, a new life, and someone is mourning the death of a friend or loved one. Like, these two are always in conversation with each other. It's not one or the other. It's both at the same time, and they don't take away or negate the law that faith is still the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things we don't see. That the law of attraction keeps saying, hey, the negativity that comes into your mind translates to your being, and ultimately all you see. Hey, here's a good example, Greg. I think psychologists use this example. If I say to you, oh my goodness, there are so many pink cars out there now. Just because I've said that and it's in your mind now, I mean, this guy is crazy. Who has ever seen a pink car? There are maybe 1 in a million. I guarantee you, as you start driving now, you're going to start seeing pink cars everywhere.
It always happens when I buy a vehicle and I think it's such a unique and amazing color, and I jump in my car on the way home, I see a half a dozen that's like, you've got to be
Same
kidding
color.
me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where were they yesterday? How come they all come out today?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
And I think these things are exactly like that. In conversation with each other, the law of faith, the law of attraction is there, but this other thing.
So let me understand what I think I hear you saying.
Yeah.
Is that we can't necessarily stop the really ugly, bad things that are taking place in this world. we can
address a
mitigate
few,
some of
yeah.
them. We can mitigate them,
Yeah.
but some of this stuff is going to happen.
The bad things happen.
The bad things happen. But what we can do by changing our thinking, by putting a very positive perspective, a very much a praise perspective on life, saying there's a God that's in control. I don't have all the answers, but I can have trust, I can have faith, and live in a bubble
Yeah.
of happiness,
Yeah.
even though we see calamities happening around us.
That ultimately is good for
It's good for us.
us. I think so. Because, listen, you have two individuals who decide to go into a similar business. I don't know why they'll do that. I mean, you diversify. But anyway, for the sake of the argument, two individuals go into a similar business, okay? And they both invest $25 million into this business, okay? One fellow goes into it thinking, oh my goodness, if I lose this, I mean, if anything happens, if I lose this, that's the end of me. Now, I will be totally done for if I lose this. I better not lose this. I better not lose this. Oh, what happens if I lose this? Oh, someone is going to do this. So just all negative. Now, the lady on the side who has also invested $25 million, and she's saying, oh yeah, this is going to be good. I mean, I'm going to make a return. She's just positive about this business. Both businesses are hit by the same crisis, and they all both collapse. Now we look at the individuals. How are they going to cope with the tragedies, mostly unexpected tragedies of life? How are they going to cope? Well, the lady who was all positive, still in her outlook of life, she's saying, yeah, things are working for the good. There's something good that's going to come out of this. I'm good. I mean, it's okay. This guy is saying, that's it. I knew it. This was going to happen. I'm done. I'm out of here. Well, and then it just spirals more. And then their quality of life while in that crisis is different. And I think the quality of life matters when you're at a crisis point. And what the law of attraction does, and maybe over time the vocabulary will change, or maybe define better what it is you are attracting. What the law of attraction does is that it makes me, it puts me in a better place to engage with this unpredictably messy world. And I think faith does that also.
That's an interesting point.
Yeah, like it just makes me, it puts me in a better place to engage the world, because there are several crises that can happen in the world. You know, Jesus tells a story of, is it Jesus, Mr. Director? Can you fact check me on this one? I think there's a statement that he says about the sun rising on both the good and the bad. You know,
The rain falls on the both and the good and the bad.
the rain falls on both
Yes.
the good and the bad.
Yeah.
Like, that stuff doesn't discriminate. But those who are receiving that, you know, you can celebrate the rain, or you can see the rain as a huge flood that you really, really didn't need at this point. I think your state of mind matters when the sun is rising on both the good and the bad. It's either this sun has risen to destroy your businesses, your fields. It's just going to destroy your fields. This is great. This is preparation for a great drought. I cannot believe the sun has risen. Or, wow, my plants are going to grow. They're going to make food for themselves. This is actually something pretty. good that's going to happen. The sun rising is pretty good. So one event, but the mindset of the people who are experiencing this, that's where the difference, I think that's where the rubber is meeting the road. Am I making sense?
I like that, except that there's a couple of stories in the Bible
Yeah.
that talk about putting stuff away for a bad event. You should store stuff
Yes.
up.
Store your treasures in heaven where moth and
Yeah.
don't eat or
Yeah. So my point is that I believe in all of this. One should not be, their head should be not too high in the clouds, but say, you know what, something could happen. I need to have something in place for plan B.
okay.
And if you have a plan B, doesn't mean it has to be negative, but if the things do go south, I got something here I can work with. I got resources, I got etc. on it. So to live in a Cinderella type of mindset, I think it's important to have a very positive outlook and yet be realistic. Okay, what I'm coming to is that for many years,
Yeah.
we would go on a road trip. And when I wouldn't put a spare tire in, I'd have a flat.
Yeah, you'd have.
When I put a spare
Yeah.
tire in, I'd get through. My point is that you got to keep a balance on that.
I do think though that the narrative, the faith narrative, I think has a balance on that is worth appreciating. Here's an example. I'm thinking of a story here that will exemplify this in a beautiful way. I want to read it. Luke chapter 13.
Okay.
Okay. Now listen to this story. You'll love this. And I'm reading it from the Message Bible. About that time, some people came up and told him being Jesus, the Messiah, about the Galileans Pilate had killed while they were at worship. This is a disaster. Okay. Some people from Galilee were worshiping, and Pilate murdered them. You go to church, you're going to worship, and then you end up losing your head. Okay, they didn't go to church saying, well, I'm going to church and while I'm there, I'm planning on losing my head. No, this is a disaster that happened. But the story doesn't stop there. It says Pilate killed them while they were at worship, mixing their blood with the blood of the sacrifices on the altar. That's even more horrific. So they ask Jesus, what do you do with that? Jesus responded, do you think those murdered Galileans were worse sinners than all other Galileans? So basically Jesus is saying there is no hierarchy on who deserves tragedy more than the other. You know, like tragedy is just tragedy. These messy, bad things are exactly that, messy, bad things. They are not messy, bad things for Christians, messy, bad things for Muslims, messy, bad things for, no. Bad things are bad things. That's the argument he's making. And he doesn't stop there. He gives them another illustration. He says, first of all, do you think those murdered Galileans were worse sinners than all other Galileans? Not at all, he says. No. And then he says, unless you turn to God, you too will die. So basically what he's saying here is that, hey, there are more important things here. Tragedies happen, but I need you to choose life. In the context of tragedy, I need you to choose life. And then he gives them another illustration that I'm trying to get to here. He says, and how about those 18 in Jerusalem the other day? The ones crushed and killed when the tower collapsed and fell on them. Do you think they were worse citizens than all other people in Jerusalem? Not at all. So he says, hey, you spoke of this tragedy. The other day there were some fellows who were by the tower and the tower just collapsed and killed 18 of them. Does it say somehow these bad people were maneuvered into this area and voila, the tower fell and killed them because they are bad people? No. Bad things happen. Just bad things happen. We don't always have, we spoke in a previous episode about how we tell stories to try and come to terms and have a firm grip on bad things. But bad things happen. And because bad things happen, it doesn't say to us we should therefore surrender ourselves to the next tragedy that's coming our way. But we can choose to be in a better place when those tragedies come. And I think that's where faith or the law of attraction is really useful for us to adopt. Because what it will do is that when that tragedy happens, I have a better sense of view of the world around me. I don't start to define myself, who I am, or the world around me by the context of the tragedy that I'm in.
Yes.
But I'm in a better place.
Yes.
And there's I'm thinking of one more. Greg, let me read one more here. Philippians. Philippians has this advice that I think we have taken in a different context, but in the context in which we're talking about, just see how meaningful this is. So Paul says, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is worthy of respect, whatever is just, pure, lovely, commendable, if something is excellent or praiseworthy, think about these things. If there's something that is worth investing our thoughts on, it's these things that are pure, that are beautiful, that are, not the negative stuff. Here's my bias of the day. I think most of what we see on the news is a magnification of the bad things that happen in life. And then, 24-hour news cycle where we're just focusing on these bad things. I think they're not healthy for us.
I like where you're taking this conversation, because I believe that it actually has tremendous value. Is that we live in this world, and we can have as many happy thoughts as we want. You can get hit going across the road by a Mack truck.
Yeah.
You can be walking by the Temple Square and the tower collapse and you get killed. Examples that you showed in the Bible. But what gives us the opportunity is how we respond to those.
Yeah.
And that meta-narrative that we hold in our thinking, is the universe out to get us, or is the universe working on our behalf? And I think that actually, nails this thing down really quite well, because if I say, I put an action board out, say, you know what, here's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
If I put this idea of running on a track, there's going to be some tough moments that I'm going to deal with. If you were to put an action board on the wall here, saying, here is what we want to accomplish, but we're going to have to work like crazy. we should prepare for some problems.
Yeah.
And that is a difficult thing to admit, because all we want is good and more good. But we should have a plan B in place. Okay, here's what happens, but we're still going to hit our goal.
Yeah.
And that has tremendous value. And I think as a person of faith, we see ourselves not just our end game. The game doesn't stop at the death of our child, premature death of our child. We have the assurance, the hope,
Yeah.
that someday there will be an eternity, and we can spend that time with the child being happy and healthy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in that context, it allows me to still have a positive outlook on life, even though there's a tragedy happening.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, Greg, I think outside of a religious meta-narrative, outside of
Yes.
whatever term you want to attach to this thing that we're talking about here, I think most people would agree, and the good folks who are scientists would confirm that positivity works better for us in the long run.
Powerful point.
We are better off in a positive frame of mind, even in the context of negative world or life events.
Yeah. And that applies, it doesn't matter if you believe in a God or you don't believe in a God.
Yeah.
It's still healthy. It's still good. It's still a strong thing to do.
Yeah, and the Christian meta-narrative is maybe, see, this is where we fall short on words. Maybe we do a lot of harm by saying it's a Christian meta-narrative. Maybe it is maybe it is a Christian meta-narrative, but it is open to everyone. There are no boundaries to, well, if you are of this denominational affiliation, or if you are outside of this and you are that, then you have no access.
Yeah.
Anyone. And the positivity, if you want to get rid of the Christian context altogether, that's okay.
Yeah.
But you need to be in a positive frame of mind for your own good, for the good of those you interact with, for the good of those you live with, for the good of those you work with, because that positivity is ultimately not only good for you, but good for the entire human family. Entire human family, when we have that positivity in it. And hey, at the end of the day, something bad might come your way. It is not what's going to matter on that day is what you have brought into that bad situation.
Yes.
What you are is going to determine how you respond and survive that situation. So if there is any food for the journey that is worth taking, I think faith, or outside of the Christian context, the law of attraction is something that is worth taking.
Yep.
Because you will need that. I remember seeing a proverb where it says, Mr. Director, you might want to fact check me on this one. And if it's there, put it on the screen for our viewers to see this. It says a thick bankroll will be of no help when life falls apart.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is wisdom. But it says moral character, is it? Or moral courage can stand up to anything. You know what? Just give me a second. Mr. Director, put that on the screen here. A thick bankroll is no help when life falls apart. But a principled life,
Principled life.
a principled life can stand up to the West. So what you want to bring into those moments of life that are a bit nasty is not your bank balance, but a principled life. And I think one of the principles that is worth bringing into that moment of crisis is faith.
Yep. No, it makes sense.
Or
The law of attraction.
the law of attraction.
Yeah.
Because I think it will help you stand up to the worst. And again, Greg, we've reached that point of our day where you and I can talk for forever and ever and ever and ever about
I
this.
still got a bunch of questions about that, but
I'm sure you do, buddy.
yeah.
You know, we I'm sure even our listeners have a whole lot of questions. But
Yeah.
in celebration of nuance, context, and conversation, please go online, buy yourself that t-shirt.
Yep.
It is a celebration of, it's us saying this concept is big enough
For everyone.
for everyone. And it is good for us as a human family. Okay. And so please just go online, buy yourself that t-shirt. And before you even go there, please hit the like button and subscribe and share and all those good things. And let's continue having this conversation. And so until next
I'm
time.
having positive thoughts that'll happen.
Oh, I have those positive thoughts also. Until then, please open your life to faith. And we'll meet again next time.